The college football playoffs are just 5 days away, but the offseason is already in full swing. We've got more transfer portal updates, a close Heisman race to talk about, and our good friend Jake Crain from Crain Company will be joining us later. This is part one of our college football playoff preview, and this, of course, is Always Talking Ball. Tyler Noe, Lance Barton. Lance, let's start in New York City Saturday night, where the Heisman Trophy was awarded to Travis Hunter, dual threat player from Colorado. Obviously, big campaign for him throughout the year. Big campaign for him and Ashton Jeanty, really, from the start of the season. Obviously, Deion's voice carries a lot of weight. Mixed emotions on Travis Hunter winning the Heisman from a lot of people. And a lot of people out there saying he doesn't do anything he does. He's not the best at, right? He just does everything really well. Maxwell Award came out the other night. It was actually Ashton Jeanty, which I think the Maxwell Award is probably more in line with kind of the college football most valuable player. I would say the Heisman is probably the most outstanding player, which every time you watch Travis Hunter, you thought to yourself, dude, this guy is freaking outstanding.
Yeah, there's I think anything now with Prime, Colorado, Shador, Travis Hunter, all of that, it's just one of those deals. It's almost like the political world where you're either on one side or the other, or if you happen to say anything remotely like not even negative, like that you're just not that you're just not praising them, that you come off, then you're a hater, and you don't like Coach Prime, you don't like Colorado, and that's not the case. If you talk good about them, that means that you're riding all over that bandwagon. But in regards to Travis Hunter winning it, dude, I didn't think it was egregious or anything like that. Not even a little bit. I'm totally fine with him winning it. Like, again, how often, man, have we seen a guy that is, I talked about it earlier this year. Think about like how unbelievable it is to even remotely get drafted in the NFL draft, then how great you have to be to get drafted in the first round of the NFL draft, and then to think about what you've got to do to get drafted in the top 10 of the NFL draft at a single position, like at your position that you specialize in. This dude is going to get drafted in the top 10, top 5 of the NFL draft, and nobody knows exactly what position he's going to play. That's how good he is at both positions. Yeah. And to be honest, I think he is going to play. I could see him playing some both ways in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I could. And I've heard other people talk about that as well. Why do they have to just relegate him to one side of the ball in the league? Unless he's so elite in the NFL at corner and you don't want to take a chance on him taking a huge hit across the middle on offense or something and him getting injured and exposing him more to injuries, sure. But in regards to the Heisman, I mean, I'm not scared to say it. If I was a voter, I would have voted for Ashton Jeanty. If I was a voter, to be honest.
It was a very, very close race.
It was. But what I have sat there and, like, again, a lot of people on social media Saturday night was just, of course, a lot of it was negativity for the reasons you just said. Like, he's not the best wide receiver. He's not the best defensive back.
Yeah.
I think there's an argument to be made about that, though, on the defensive back part.
I mean, he won both awards.
Right. Again, he's a great receiver. I don't think he's the best. I don't think he's the best receiver in college football. He's great.
Yeah.
He's great. He's elite.
It's just incredible that he can be that good and then turn around and play defense and have 4 or 5 picks on the season and be that good on defense as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And on defense, though, yeah, dude, I would. I'm not a bit scared to say at all that I think he might be the best defensive back, best corner in all of college football.
Yeah.
So it's not egregious, man. You know, congratulations to him. But more so, dude, how awesome is it, man? Just thinking about, you think back to like his recruitment when everybody thought he was going to Florida State, and then last minute he flips and goes to Jackson State to be with Deion. He trusted Coach Prime and Deion to go there. People thought he was so dumb to do that. And then he followed Coach Prime and Deion to Colorado. People thought he was dumb to do that too. And he kept saying all along that he trusted in Coach Prime. He trusted in Deion to help develop him even more. And to know that guy went from that, all the scrutiny from it, to now he's a Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah.
Hate him or love him, or hate it and love the situation, whatever. That is incredible, and it's an incredible story. And I think
Hate
it's
him or love him,
awesome.
the underdog's on top.
Yeah, yeah. I think
He's not an underdog. He's a 5-star recruit, but
he
still.
is. Yeah, I think he's one of the top players in the country, no doubt.
Yeah.
But yeah, good for him, man. I think that's awesome. I do think though that let's just call it what it is too. There was an absolute like media hype push
Yeah.
from a lot of folks for him,
Yep.
and there wasn't the same for Ashton Genty. But Genty, again, the career that he's had and the year that he had this year, and we know he's going to be he's going to be the top running back taken in the NFL draft. Nothing to hang your head on there, and he did win the Maxwell Award, like you said, so he got a nice little deal to add to his trophy case as well.
Yep.
But no, man, I didn't think it was egregious or anything.
Okay. Real quick before we get to transfer portal updates, if you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, look at your phone and make sure you are subscribing or following on there. It is free. I promise you, we're not going to charge you any money for watching our two ugly mugs or listening to our voices. Also, we did something new last week. We got on X on our account at AlwaysTalkBall, and we hosted our first space on X to talk about college football. And we're going to start doing these a lot more, especially after some of these college football playoff games, maybe even some bowl games that happen to be exciting. Maybe even if there's some breaking news, in college football during the next couple months. So be on the lookout for those. We're excited. Just kind of, connect with the fans more and just talk ball as much as we can. So, Lance, why don't you run us down some of the latest transfer portal news?
Well, the only thing that never sleeps in college football right now, especially this time of year, is the transfer portal. It's nuts, the amount of people jumping in. So we're going to just hit some high points here of some of your top players that here over the weekend that have actually landed and announced where they are going and where they've committed to. We're going to start with Georgia corner Julian Humphrey, which this has been one that's been very interesting. He was announced, and the graphics were shown that he was going into the transfer portal the week leading up to the SEC championship game, like on Tuesday or Wednesday of that week. Some of the interviews with some of the players with Georgia and Kirby Smart, they were all just pretty caught off guard by it, it seemed like, and definitely didn't seem like they really wanted to talk about it. He plays in the SEC championship game against Texas. Again, I've looked several places, haven't seen much on it. Again, there's not much. It's almost like the New England Patriots back in Bill Belichick days at New England. Just it seemed like hardly things ever come out of there in today's world of media where you would think that you would get a ton of news. I don't know if Julian Humphrey's playing in this college football playoff or not with Georgia. But we do know where he's going to be playing and where he's going to be enrolled in spring ball this current year, and that is with old Mike Elko and Gig'em and the Texas A&M Aggies. So big get for A&M and that Mike Elko defense. Getting Julian Humphrey, defensive back from Georgia, is transferring to Texas A&M. Any thoughts on that?
I just can't see him playing for Georgia in the playoffs. I mean, if you're already committed to a new school, like that doesn't seem like something Kirby is going to let fly. Like, I don't know. That would be very surprising if you saw him suited up on New Year's night down in New Orleans. But,
yeah, Kirby doesn't strike me as the one that takes this as well as Kenny Dillingham is taking it at Arizona State right now. He's the exact opposite, actually.
Yeah.
And how about Jackson Arnold? Former five-star Gatorade National Player of the Year out of Denton, out of a high school in Denton, Texas, at Oklahoma. He did not have the year that he wanted to have, but Jackson Arnold is transferring to Auburn. So Hugh Freeze and Auburn got possibly their QB1 for this next year. There's talks that they're probably going to take another quarterback in this transfer portal. They've got incoming true freshman and Deuce Knight out of the state of Mississippi that they're very excited about, five-star lefty. But I got a quick little take here on Jackson Arnold that I want to say.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to admit I look really stupid on how I hyped him up before the year and the year that he ended up having. I'm not making excuses for him, but I think we're going to find out which one of these things are true. He's either booty cheeks, which is what he looked like this year, or he was the product of not having the pieces around him for him to be successful in his first year of starting at the college football level. I don't know that I've ever seen at the high level, Power 4 level with some like a really top tier program like Oklahoma, the injury bug and the lack of depth and stuff that they had on the offensive side of the ball this year. If you watch them play, you know all about it. They talked about it religiously, like the broadcasters too talked about it religiously during the games. Going into the year, Oklahoma was supposed to have a pretty bad offensive line. That was definitely the case. And they also had injuries to those really bad offensive linemen, where even worse offensive linemen were coming in and playing, like former walk-ons coming in and playing. And then something happened that I've never seen before. Early in the year, their top 5 wide receivers on the depth chart, top 5, all were out with injuries. And pretty much the entire season. Like Denzel Burke came in against Texas and tried to play in the Red River game, and he got hurt like on the opening possession in that game. So, I mean, Andrell Anthony and Nick Anderson, Jalil Farouk, Denzel Burke, all 4 of those guys are dudes at receiver, and they pretty much didn't play the entire year. So, was it a product of that it just really did? He didn't really have anything around him. He lost his confidence. That was evident in the Tennessee game this year. But again, he had nothing around him. So he also went to Oklahoma to play for Jeff Lebby. That was his offensive coordinator that he signed up to play for in that style of offense, which fit his, like what he wants to do. It fit what he did in high school too. Jeff Lebby leaves and goes to Mississippi State. They signed Seth Luttrell as the new offensive coordinator. And then they tried to run a more of like a pro style type system, and it just did not fit at all. So now he's going to Hugh Freeze, where they're going to be running the RPO. Hugh Freeze even talked about it, that he fits the RPO system fantastic. That's what he ran in high school. That's what Lebby runs a lot of as well. So we're going to find out either that he's either booty cheeks, or the problem was this year he was he had issues with the system and the players around him.
Yeah. It was, I guess, an upset in the transfer portal that he didn't go to Mississippi State.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
He can run the ball. We saw what he did with his legs against Alabama. He ran the ball pretty well there, kind of in the RPO game that they wanted to run.
Yep.
I guess, he was a 5-star coming out, and you're probably thinking, oh, he's going to play 3 or 4 years. Well, if you think he's going to be, lighted up at Auburn, he may only stay 1 more year at Auburn and go pro after 3 years, because he's probably got the tools and the characteristics and the traits that NFL GMs want. We haven't seen a lot of that from him so far, but if he lights it up, that's good for him. That's good for Auburn. If he doesn't, and obviously you can transfer every freaking year if you want to now, but he's got Deuce Knight right behind him. So I'm kind of, it is an interesting landing spot to where he may only be there 1 year, maybe a bridge to a guy like Deuce Knight. So it's definitely an interesting landing spot. I mean, to me, I'll be honest, we hyped him up, but I feel like he's maybe a little better than Peyton Thorne. This feels like honestly, to me, this feels like a Kyle McCord to Will Howard.
Yeah. I mean, so far what we've seen, I mean, I don't know that Jackson Arnold's ceiling is significantly higher than Peyton Thorne. Much bigger arm, better overall athlete. But I agree with you. Like right now, from what we've seen, like how big of an upgrade is it going to be? But this was absolutely it's an upside type pickup for Hugh Freeze in Auburn, no doubt.
Yeah.
Kind of moving along here, staying at the quarterback position. I guess Jeff Brom last year in the Holiday Bowl, after he watched Miller Moss just sling 6 tutties against his Louisville Cardinal bunch when Miller Moss's first start for Lincoln Riley and USC. He saw Miller Moss get into the transfer portal and said, I want that guy to be my quarterback. So I'm sure Louisville fans are fired up about him, because Louisville fans, if they've only watched him play 1 game ever, he threw 6 touchdowns and threw for almost 400 yards in the Holiday Bowl against Louisville with the US. So I think it's a really solid pickup, man, for Brom, because Moss can sling it. He can throw the football. He's accurate. And that Brom's going to get some solid receivers to put around him. Colin Lacey's coming back.
There were rumors that some of the USC receivers were going to be package deals with Moss. So
Deuce Robinson, some of them.
Guys like that. I mean, we'll see if they lean towards Louisville now.
Yep, agreed. Again, another quarterback. Started as a true freshman this year from Mississippi State, Michael Van Buren. He got in the transfer portal when all the rumors about Jackson Arnold coming to Mississippi State were flying. So Michael Van Buren, that started for Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State, had a really good year. He's transferring to LSU, and that is a very, very interesting landing spot for him with LSU's recent success with dual threat type quarterbacks. Van Buren can play. He's a baller. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with a lot more talent that he's probably going to have stacked around him at LSU. I know that LSU's got, what's his face, Nussmeier coming back. Yep. So Van Buren probably is, we might see him in some packages next year for LSU with his dual threat ability, but this is definitely more for the future after Nussmeier is gone.
Interesting to see where Mississippi State goes from here.
Agreed. There's no Jackson Arnold.
Yeah.
You got to think they're going to be going somewhere in the dual threat ability.
Yeah.
Your boy there at Liberty definitely fits that mold. Was Caden Salter?
Yep.
But I haven't seen him linked to Mississippi State at all. That's just one that I thought of. Princeville Uman Yellen. Did I say it right?
Uman Yellen. Yep.
Uman Yellen.
Yep.
The edge rusher.
His brother.
Yep. Prince Lee Uman Yellen was an edge rusher this year for Ole Miss. He transferred from Florida last year to Ole Miss this year. Really good pass rusher. His younger brother, Prince Will, was at Nebraska this year and was a big-time recruit coming out of high school. He's transferring to Ole Miss, following his brother there to join Pete Golding as an edge rusher there for Ole Miss. Another Ole Miss get was one that I really wanted Alabama to land, and that is Luke Haas. He's from Bigsby, Oklahoma, out of high school, big-time powerhouse high school program there, and right outside of Tulsa. Last year as a true freshman at Arkansas, before he got injured, he was basically their best receiver, and is a really, really good, just mismatch nightmare for defenses from the tight end position. One of those really big-time hybrid tight ends that plays like a receiver, but he can also get on the end line and block. And they're losing Caden Prescorn this year, Ole Miss is. So Lane Kiffin does a really, really good job, him and Charlie Weiss Jr., of scheming up, getting the rock to the tight end in the passing game. They got a good one in Luke Haas. So that just, same old for Ole Miss. So the Portal King's doing his thing there. Berrien Brown, wide receiver from Kentucky. He was there for a few years. Kentucky just...
Is he running back?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, Berrien Brown's a wide receiver.
Okay. Another wide receiver. Wow.
Yeah, Brown and a guy and Dane Key, two wide receivers for Kentucky, came in together. They were really, really good as true freshmen back when Liam Cohen was the offensive coordinator and Will Levis was the quarterback. And in the last 2 years, Kentucky just flamed out at the quarterback position and just couldn't throw the football much. So they got tired of sitting there waiting to see if they were going to get any better in the passing game. Berrien Brown now is joining LSU to go catch the rock from Nussmeier in that passing game. Let's see here. Kevin Coleman Jr., wide receiver, Mississippi State, put up huge numbers at Mississippi State. He's from St. Louis area here in my backyard originally. He's going to Mizzou, so nice get there for Mizzou. And then Justice Haynes, one of the two-headed monsters that Alabama had this year at tailback with Jam Miller. Justice Haynes has entered the transfer portal. I told Tyler weeks ago that I would be shocked if he did not enter the portal because Alabama just flat out doesn't run the ball the traditional way with the running back much anymore. And I imagine that Haynes, as talented as he is, former five-star, one of the top tailbacks in the country coming out of high school, he wants to go somewhere where he can be featured more in the run game. He's already been linked to two places that definitely like to do that, Michigan and Ohio State. And then defensive back Devontae Smith from Alabama. He played the Husky position, which is kind of the hybrid corner safety position for Alabama. He's in the portal. Alabama's got a lot of good young talented players in the defensive secondary. So it didn't shock me either that he actually did kind of surprise me a little bit because he was a starter. Figured he would come back. But that's two players for Alabama that has entered the portal recently. And you got to imagine they'll end up at a really top-tiered Power 4 program here really soon.
Yeah, and one more name we forgot to mention was Dylan Tieneman. The Purdue doesn't have a lot of good players, right? But this guy's a safety, and he is an absolute stud. He's played 2 years at Purdue. He's had over 100 tackles each year. His true freshman year, he had 6 interceptions. And anytime I see Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks go for a guy, he raises some eyebrows, puts the antennas up. I mean, Dan Lanning is going for a guy who played at Purdue.
He can play.
He can play.
Yep.
He's from 20 minutes up the road here in Indy, and he can definitely play. So the transfer portal is only going to be getting busier. It's got we got a couple 2 weeks here, and then with all these playoff teams we mentioned on our last episode, we don't know what players are going to be leaving and all that stuff. So we will definitely keep you updated as much as we can. All right, let's welcome in our guest, Jake Crain, host of national sports show Crain Company that streams live Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Guys, if you're not watching Crain Company every day, or at least listening to the podcast, you guys are missing out. These guys are absolute ball knowers and just love talking ball like we do here. Jake, it's an honor to have you on our show today. Thank you very much for giving us some time, man.
Oh, well, of course, man. I really like what y'all got going on, too. It's funny. I have a lot of people that always ask me, do you listen to, like, other sports shows? And for the most part, I really don't. But y'all's are one of the few that I've kind of ran into that I can listen to and enjoy. So, y'all keep doing what y'all are doing. Obviously, I see the growth, and congrats to y'all on that. But no, man, I'm I love it like everybody else loves it. I was very fortunate enough to, grow up in a house with a father that played in the SEC and coached college football for a while. And, I coached for almost a decade, about, 8 years in Division I, and then started doing this when COVID hit. And I still think I'm in a coma. I think I was recruiting somewhere and some semi hit me when I was recruiting up in Montana. But no, it's been incredible. I can't believe they pay us to do this. So it's a good gig for sure.
No doubt, man. Well, Jake, again, appreciate you joining us, bro. And I'm obviously a big fan of your show as well. And I agree with Tyler. You guys are definite ball knowers. This is why we have you on the show here today. So let's jump in.
Well, Lance, I always say I only know 4 things, and they all start with F. So football just happens to be one of them.
Yeah, I'll leave it up to the imagination to get those other Fs in there. But yeah, man, we're going to talk a little college football playoff action with you, of course. This 12-team playoff is obviously what's dominating all the headlines, unless it's coaching carousel or transfer portal right now. But we want to talk about some action on the field. So first, I got to ask you though, outside of Oregon quarterback Dylan Gabriel, which quarterback do you personally trust the most in this playoff field?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, we had the debate, yesterday on the show between, Cade Klubnik or Quinn Ewers when it comes down to it. As far as who I would take behind Dylan, and I agree with you that Dylan is obviously the top. I think there's logical and rational answers for saying a Will Howard, for saying even somebody like a Sam Leavitt at Arizona State, who I think from a development standpoint as a passer and then a sneaky runner. I don't think everybody talks about Scatabo, and they should, but Leavitt's ability to run gives them versatility across the line of scrimmage and in the box. It's one thing to sit there and your Texas and Quinn Ewers, when he's either going to hand the ball off or it's going to be a play action, you don't got to worry about him keeping it and taking it out the back door. But as far as who I would probably pick behind Dylan, man, I'm going to go Riley Leonard. I'm going to go Riley Leonard from Notre Dame. And I understand, I don't think he's an elite level passer of the ball. I think that's something that he's got to continue to improve on. But I think he's actually an elite runner of the ball. I mean, just because you don't run 4.4 doesn't mean you're an effective runner. Riley Leonard is a very effective runner. He can make guys miss. He's heavy. He's shown durability this year, and the pass games continued to improve as the year's gone on. But I mean, you can make a case if Carson Beck was healthy, possibly him too. But that's what makes this playoff so fun. There's logical answers all around this bracket as far, when it comes to quarterback. And, there's some questions. Is Carson Beck going to play? But, man, I think there's a lot of good answers. And I think who I would take is Riley Leonard.
Yeah, man, that was actually we talked about it too. That was actually someone that I went with as well, just because of what Notre Dame actually asks him to do. And like you said, his dual threat ability, the run game that he's got. That's a good answer, Jake. So let's talk about some action on the field, man. I want to jump into this Tennessee-Ohio State game. I mean, let's be real. It is the most marquee matchup of opening weekend of this playoff field, with the two brands, SEC, Big Ten matchup in Columbus, and all of the storylines surrounding it with Ryan Day and the play on the field. Jake, I gave a take after the Ohio State-Nebraska game when the Buckeye offense just looked like absolute booty cheeks after that game, that I was talking about how their recent horrors against Michigan that the Buckeyes had an identity crisis on offense, and that they were trying to be this like ground and pound run game type offense, like something that they're honestly just not. What makes Ohio State different in the Big Ten outside of Oregon are the freak athletes that they've got at the skill position. And I mean, do you think Ohio State will just continue in this game against Tennessee? Do you think they're going to continue to try to pound the rock against that Tennessee defensive front and lean on the Jim Knowles defense? Or do you think that they actually will trust Will Howard at the quarterback position enough and try to get the ball to these athletes and these skill position players in space in the passing game?
Well, you bring up a great point, and it's true. My brother's been saying the same thing. I mean, even going back and before some of the injuries that Ohio State's had on the offensive line, I watched Akron kind of punch him in the face for a while in one of the first games of the season, and they ended up pulling away and actually ended up covering, but they didn't look as dominant physically as what I thought they should look like. And no, I actually think that playing Tennessee, Chip Kelly is not going to try and turn them something they're not, because they just tried to do it against Michigan. And they're not as emotional about this game. Not that they don't care. That's not what I mean.
Yeah.
But they're not as emotional in this game as they were against Michigan. The game plan against Michigan wasn't, let's give it to our playmakers in space. Let's give it to our guys to give us the best opportunity to score. They didn't even care about the numbers in the box. I mean, I've got a buddy, and he talked about on one of his shows, one of the guys on Michigan's defensive staff couldn't believe what Ohio State was doing. They were running into loaded boxes. They were running into overload looks. What Ohio State tried to do was say, you know what? Y'all beat us the past 3-4 years, whatever. You've pushed us around. All we've heard about is y'all beat us because of physicality. You beat us when you couldn't throw the ball, so we went zero coverage and got beat twice a couple years ago to lose, which was stupid by Jim Knowles. But they literally just were banging their head against the wall and kept Michigan in the game because of it. So I think since they did that against Michigan, there's no possible way that you could go back to the well if you're Chip Kelly. Even on RPOs, if everything is even, I'm leaning spitting the ball out to my guy in space, regardless of what route that is, whether it's a bubble off the RPO, whether it's a slant off the nickel, or whatever interior intermediate defender is there. You got to play to your strengths, right? When I used to go try and pick up girls before I met my beautiful wife, I'm going to play to my strengths. I'm going to go with what works. I'm not going to go over there and try and be the guy from Split where I got 35 different personalities. It's like Colin Cowherd gave me some great advice one time when it came to talking sports. He's like, you know what? You know why McDonald's makes so much money? I was like, why? He's like, because they know they're good at making burgers. And you know what they mostly make? Burgers. So if you're good at making burgers, just shut up and make burgers. Don't worry about doing too much other stuff. And that's what Ohio State has to do. That doesn't mean you're overly imbalanced. Like, you got to mix it up, but the RPO does that for you. So, yeah, in the long-winded way, I agree with you, man. You got to play to your strengths. It's about matchups.
Yeah, man, I love that analogy, and I heavily agree with you on the part of that they were beyond emotionally invested in the wrong way against Michigan, and the fact that Tennessee has a defensive front that they've got, they know that defensive front is legit for Tennessee. So on the flip side of it, and the other side of the ball, I've honestly been talking about this since last year. It's been neat to see the evolution of Josh Heupel as a coach, as a head coach. He used to always operate at warp speed and wanted to try to score 60 if he could at UCF and in his early days at Tennessee, especially with Hendon Hooker. In the last 2 years, they've seemed to take a more conservative approach on offense, especially in the last 2 years, and really and mainly in road games mostly. They run the rock with Dylan Sampson. They lean on that defense. They kind of mix it up with their tempo. They're not just operating at warp speed constantly. Do you think that Josh Heupel in this game will, what do you think their game plan is on offense? And will they trust Nico to throw the ball down the field and try to hit some of those shot plays? Because we know Tennessee likes to use the width of the field and get their athletes in space. Do you think they'll try to do that in this game against Ohio State and trust Nico?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to have to, even if it's only a decoy to make sure Ohio State doesn't get too thick in the middle and take away, what Tennessee's best at. As far as Josh Heupel, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's what has made Kenny Dillingham's run so special is, you have to have a lot of ego to be a head coach at this level and in this business, and you got there doing a certain thing, so it's hard to go against that. But when you get to the top like this, you still have to be able to adjust to your personnel. Sometimes, in your garage of teams, you have a Ferrari. You want to take it out. You want to go fast. You want to take it past all the nightclubs, right? You want to put glow lights on the bottom of it. But sometimes you have an F-250, and it's a four-wheel drive. And you need to understand you don't need to go 100 miles an hour in it, right? You don't need to make crazy turns in it, right? You can take it off-roading, and if it has to get dirty and muddy and you got to win a low-scoring game that's a backyard brawl, you can because you're an F-250. So from a tempo standpoint, not that they haven't gone fast at times, they haven't, put the pedal down and screamed America, as you would say, like they did in the past, and that's smart. Just like Dillingham's kind of adjusted to that power ground game. That's not really who he wants to be at the end of the day. Just think about some of the past offenses that he's had, but it's what's best for his team. And to be honest with you, I think this and I led off one of the shows this week on Crain Company saying this, out of all the teams that have had recent success at Tennessee, I think this team's archetype is probably the best built to go win a cold weather physical game in Columbus, Ohio, as opposed to trying to turn it into a track meet with some of the athletes that they got. So I actually think this Tennessee team is well equipped. It is going to come down to who between Will Howard, who I don't know who I trust less down the field right now, Will Howard or Nico. They're both going to have to make some throws into tight coverage down the field to open up the box in the run. So, even if you miss a guy, just the threat of the safeties knowing they will take a shot in this weather, they will take a shot in this moment, sometimes is almost as dangerous as you being able to hit it.
No, I agree. And I think that, both of these teams obviously really trust their defenses a lot and lean on their defenses heavily. Yeah. So this is probably going to be one of those deals that it comes down to who makes the catastrophic mistakes and who doesn't. And so that's probably what's going to come down to in this game.
Yeah, well, most teams lose games. They don't win them.
Right.
That's why I tell everybody I know we're going to talk about the Indiana game. If you just looked at the box score of the Indiana-Ohio State game, you'd be like, Indiana don't deserve to be here. Like, they got absolutely mopped. And, look, they did end up getting beat pretty badly. But if you actually watch that game and the way that it happened right before halftime and to start the third quarter, you're like, man, it's not like Ohio State just pistol whipped them, right? Like, it's Indiana made a couple mistakes. So there's a balance between not wanting to lose the game but also playing to win the game, right? That's the balance you got to find, and a lot of that is dictated, schematically by what coverage you're getting, what box looks you're getting. And Nico's got to run the ball. He's got to use his legs, not only on quarterback design runs, not only keeping it on zone read, but if a play breaks down, he realizes it's man coverage. He's got to be able to take off and make Ohio State pay, and that'll extend drives.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, Jake, let's talk about that in-state matchup. Indiana traveling up to South Bend to face the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. In this matchup, we know Notre Dame wants to run the ball, right? Indiana hasn't really faced a three-headed attack, like, Jadarian Price, Jeremiah Love, Riley Leonard especially. I mean, the quarterback they've faced who has the most rushing yards in the season is Aiden Childs of Michigan State. So the big question is, can Indiana's defense hold up against what Notre Dame wants to do on offense?
Yeah, well, I mean, if there's one thing Indiana's been really good at this year, it's stopping the run. I think they're second in the country in yards per rush given up, somewhere around there. I mean, heck, if you're even close to that realm, it's very impressive. But on that same hand, I think multiple things can be true at once. They haven't faced a team with the versatility in the run game and the capability in the pass game that Notre Dame has, and this Notre Dame team is built different than the ones that we've seen in the past. Typically they've been, big and kind of, clunky. Maybe you got one guy that's got some witch in him on the outside that you can send deep. But this Notre Dame team, not that they're small up front, I actually think the offensive line, when you look at all the injuries that have happened there at certain places, even in the preseason, they've done a pretty good job. But Riley Leonard as a runner, again, I'll go back to what I said earlier when you asked me the quarterback question. Some guys run like quarterbacks and some guys run like running backs, but they play quarterback. To me, Riley Leonard could actually play running back and be a decent player. He reminds me kind of a little bit when Brock Bowers would get the ball in space. He's a heavy-shouldered guy. He can change direction pretty decently, but he has good feel. And that's a thing that, again, it's God-given as a runner. He's not a straight line guy that's just fast, right? Just a track guy that's fast once he gets going. So I think his ability, not only from a physicality standpoint and athletic standpoint, but from a mental standpoint on knowing when to give the ball, knowing when to keep the ball, knowing when to take off. That is dangerous in itself. Now, if you're Indiana, the question to me becomes, yeah, they may have some more speed on the outside, but at what point do I just load the box and say, that's fine if you're going to beat me? Riley Leonard's got to beat me with his arms. Now, they're not going to do that early because you don't do that early because you want to test to see if you play them even, can you stop them? Because why would I go all in on the first hand when I don't know how the table's playing? The minute you realize you can't do that, you're probably going to start stunning. You're probably going to start bringing different type of pressures, having guys cross stick, things like that, to see if you can, the blitzing of the run game on defense, as I say. And then if that doesn't work and you got to mix a little bit of everything, I don't want to speak in absolutes, then you've got to start loading the box and just turning it into a math game and saying, if you're going to beat me, that's fine. Riley Leonard beat me over the top because we're just going to throw a math problem at you.
Yeah. On the other side of the ball, biggest question to me is, can Indiana's offensive line protect Curtis Rourke? Because we all saw, you mentioned earlier, the Ohio State game. Yeah, while they gave him 2 special teams touchdowns, the offensive line looked overmatched once Jim Knowles started bringing a lot of pressure. He had Curtis Rourke seeing ghosts out there. I do think that depending on the weather, Indiana's offense has a chance to have success through the air against Notre Dame. I mean, with Notre Dame injuries on the back end, most notably Benjamin Morrison, the fact that Al Golden just plays a ton of man-to-man, I think these wide receivers for Indiana have a chance to get open over the middle of the field. If they can give Rourke enough time, you got to think, though, that Notre Dame's looking at that Ohio State defensive game plan.
Yeah, well, I think there's actually, and I don't hear enough people talk about this, I think Ewers and Rourke are very similar. Like, when you watch the way they play, I think Quinn's arm's a little bit bigger than Rourke's, but stylistically, they have a decent amount in common, right? Like, they can wiggle out sometimes, but that's not their game. The reason that Indiana is a routine on-schedule team. I said that earlier in the week, they wake up, they're the routine person. They're like I am. They're going to wake up at the same time every day. They're going to go through the same routine. They're going to go brush their teeth. They're going to get in the shower. They're going to check their emails. They're going to get the coffee going, take the dogs out. And if one thing goes wrong in that, it can screw up the whole day. I'm out of toothpaste. Oh, God, what are we going to do, right? I forgot to get coffee from Kroger. That when they get off schedule, they are not, and get in predictable passing downs, which is what happened against Ohio State. You go back and watch early, they were pretty on schedule because they were balanced and the best camouflage to protect a quarterback in pass protection and to help the offensive line is a good run game, and it's balanced offensively so guys can't pin their ears back. It's also getting in versatile downs, right? 3rd and 4s and below. I can't pin my ears back at defensive end on 3rd and 2. I can on 3rd and 12. And Ohio State got off schedule. They got down 2 touchdowns because they dropped the punt. The punter dropped the snap and basically gave Ohio State a touchdown. Then, after a 3 and out, they returned a punt for a touchdown. Now we're in the second half, and Indiana's got to become more one-dimensional, and that's why he was a sitting duck. So if Indiana stays on schedule, they can win this game. If Indiana stays on schedule, they could possibly beat Ohio State. But that's the danger with Indiana. A lot of things have to go right, and they cannot afford any self-inflicted wounds. And it's going to be the same thing in this game, and you will see that if they're balanced and they're in non-predictable downs, versatile downs, they will have success and they will keep that offense off the field. So a lot of it is staying on schedule with this team, and it's a luxury when you can do either, but they don't have that luxury, which has made it all the more impressive they've won this many games.
Yeah. Looking from the Notre Dame side, kind of at a whole, Brian Kelly was 22-27 against ranked opponents in Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman is 11-4. He seems to be kind of a big game coach. Obviously, he has trouble with the Marshalls and the Northern Illinois of the world at home. And Indiana's top 10 team, not necessarily a big name brand per se. If this game's tight in the first half, do we see Notre Dame start feeling a little more pressure just knowing how some of those games in the past couple of years have gone?
Yeah, well, I mean, this one, I just can't believe the state of Indiana is the state that's hosting a playoff game with 2 teams from it. I wonder what the odds would have been on the sportsbook on that one before the season. Here's I think it's a different type of pressure. There's going to be game pressure regardless, just because it's an elimination game. We even see this with 16 seeds playing 1 seeds in the college basketball tournament, right? Like, you get halfway through the first half and they're only up 4. Everybody starts tuning in. Like, is Arkansas Pine Bluff going to do this? So there's going to be that game pressure. But this is different because Notre Dame's supposed to be the team in the state of Indiana. Now, when it comes to college football, not Purdue even, not Indiana, not Ball State. It's supposed to be Notre Dame. So, like, we've seen, like, Auburn and Alabama be in-state and both be good, right? We've seen this before. We just saw Texas and Texas A&M play a consequential game. But this is just weird because if you're a Notre Dame, it's a lot of pressure on Notre Dame. Because Indiana, you're playing with house money. Nobody thought Indiana was going to be here. And you get a chance to go play Notre Dame in their house. And Cignetti's confident. He's unbelievably. He was upset with where they were seated, and people couldn't believe that. They're like, "Oh, you should just be thankful to be in." No, he's changing the culture there, and to change the culture, you got to keep that swag. You got to keep that. We are the big dogs. So I just think there's naturally a lot of pressure because technically, no offense to Indiana, I don't even know if this is little brother. This is like the little cousin, and y'all are playing in the big one. Like, it's I think there's a lot of pressure on Notre Dame. And if you're Indiana, the longer you hang around in this one, because the chip on the shoulder is going to be easy for Cignetti. You're going on the road. Look at Notre Dame. I'd be showing them. We'd watch Rudy every night if I was Cignetti. We'd watch it every night. I'd just be subliminally hitting them with it.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. And they haven't played since 1991. Interestingly enough, that the first time they played in 1991, that was the first NBC game for Notre Dame. So this game's not going to be on NBC for the first time as a Notre Dame home game in 33 years. So I'm with you, though, man. I live here in Indiana, so sometimes Notre Dame is not even considered to be in the state. They're just kind of up north. And, like you said, I mean, it's just they don't even really ever think about Indiana.
So is there any hate there? Is there like any just good old-fashioned hate? Or is it just like, hey, man, you surprised us at the party. I can't believe you flew all the way here.
No, what you find here is you find a lot of Notre Dame football and Indiana basketball fans. Very mixed.
See,
yeah.
That would never happen in Alabama. You would never find, like, I'm an Auburn basketball fan, but an Alabama football fan. Yeah, we send those people to Guantanamo. No offense, but.
And I think it's just because Notre Dame, I mean, they were recruiting nationally long before any other school was recruiting nationally. They got a wide fan base. But yeah, I mean, they think a lot more about Purdue, Michigan, kind of the schools that are closer to them than that little school down in Bloomington.
This is awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. Jake, once again, man, can't thank you enough for coming on. Let the people know one more time where they can find you and your show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, look, whether it's YouTube, Roku, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, I'm not smart enough to remember every platform that it's on. Just YouTube's the easiest. Crain Company, CRAIN and Company on Daily Wire Plus too. But we don't really get political. I mean, unless you don't like Ward Manuel and his answers, then I think you'll fit right in. But I think that's most of us. But yeah, come check us out live 2 to 3:30 p.m. Central each weekday. Just had Rhett Lashley on. Got another coach coming on next week. We're really excited about. So yeah, come hang out with us.
Awesome, man. This was a blast. Can't wait to do it again soon.
Hey, y'all keep doing what y'all doing, man. It's really good stuff. And anytime you need me, just hit me up.
Appreciate it, Jake.
All right, man. Y'all be good.
All right, man. Man, that was awesome. I mean, you got to know that. I mean, Jake's his ball knowledge is incredible. Every time I catch his show, Crain Company, I usually catch it on YouTube when they're live during the week. I mean, just again, his knowledge of ball and just his show in general, it's awesome. It was great to have him on and get his perspective and get his thoughts on these games. I like what he had to say too about, like, we're talking about the quarterback position and just like what quarterback do you trust the most in this CFP, and like. I've seen people put it on X as well. It's interesting. I've heard other people give. I don't think there's really necessarily a wrong answer. It's just a hard answer to think about. And I agree 100% with him that Riley Leonard, that's who I would honestly say as well, just because of what they ask him to do and his dual threat ability, a lot of what Jake had to say there. And just interesting, man, getting his take on just how these two matchups and how these teams match up with each other and what his thoughts were on it. I also thought it was cool, man, that he loved the fact that when you said that you lived, in the state of Indiana, and he wanted to know about the difference in Indiana and Notre Dame and just the overall like the temperature of the room there, if they're rivals or not. And I lost it when he was like, yeah, man, like, it's like, I don't even think Indiana's like little brother to them. Are they like little cousin almost to Notre Dame? That's hilarious, man.
Yeah, and he said, the Indiana basketball Notre Dame football fan would never happen in almost any other state, right? So it's just kind of a one-off here maybe for the state of Indiana. You got some fans like that. I'm one of them. So make no bones about it. But
no, I mean, usually you would have a fan of like whoever football, and they're also a fan of Duke basketball or Kentucky basketball or North Carolina basketball, like type deal. Like you said, it's rare that you have like such a historical hoops program like Indiana in the same state of an historical football program, like Notre Dame. And dude, I'm going to have to send him a message about this. His ball knowledge, Jake's ball knowledge, is obviously off the charts. His analogies that he gives are elite every time, man. And they're so relatable. It cracks me up how good he is at that.
Yep. All right. Let's do a little talking on our own here. Just kind of following up with Jake. Tennessee, Ohio State. Obviously, it's Saturday night, 8 p.m. It's kind of the main event on the first round card here, if you will. Boxing analogy there. Gonna be cold in Columbus. They're 7.5 point favorites right now. We can see paths for both teams to win this game. Obviously, you got on one hand the most talented roster on paper in the country.
Yep.
Very questionable coach. He's no longer on the hot seat. I mean, obviously, the AD at Ohio State had to actually come out and say Ryan Day will be the coach next year. Like, that's never a good sign when you have to do that for a guy who's
vote of confidence.
62.
The old dreaded vote of confidence.
Yeah. So that's never good. But it sounds like Ryan Day will be back next year. He's got big game struggles. We know what happened in Michigan. Tennessee, on the other hand, have not really been. Obviously, they haven't been to a playoff. I can't remember. The game. They have a lot of big games per year: Alabama, Georgia, all that stuff. But as far as like games of consequence, like they haven't even been in a scenario lately where, if they win this game, like they're going to the SEC championship. Like it just hasn't come around for them a lot. And Tennessee they've probably been more Jekyll and Hyde than Ohio State. I mean, we're talking about that 4-game stretch they had where they were getting shut out in every first half. Was very concerning for a lot of people.
Yeah, it was. We talked about it a lot this year, how their inconsistencies on offense. And I'll even go back to last year. We were talking about how the evolution, like we talked about it with Jake a minute ago. I asked him the question. It's been, interesting to see the evolution of Josh Heupel as a head coach. And I've honestly been like pretty locked in on Tennessee and that whole situation there from constantly going from warp speed to slinging the ball all over the yard, being very balanced offensively, throwing and passing, to, again, really kind of leaning on your defense and running game and being a more like physical, hit you in the mouth, punch you in the mouth type of team. That's what Tennessee has become. And I mean, we talked about, I mentioned to you after the Georgia game, I talked about going into the Georgia game that Tennessee's struggles on the road the last few years. I mean, you go back to last year, they lost at Mizzou last year, got drilled at Mizzou last year, got drilled at Florida last year. This year they lose by double digits at Georgia. They lose by double digits at Arkansas. No, they didn't.
19-14.
19-14. Lost on the road at a 5-6 loss Arkansas team. So I mean, Tennessee has struggled away from Knoxville, and they've been death in Knoxville. So that is why when we were talking about this 8-9 matchup, how they have these two teams seeded would be a huge deal. If Tennessee was at home, dude, I would have been unloading on the balls immediately. But again, because of the way, like Jake said, the way that Tennessee is built this year, they're more built now to go play a game like this against an Ohio State team in cold weather like this. So with Tennessee, we're going to start on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, it really does. Like, I think Dylan Sampson, if Tennessee wants, they need to be able to run the football. They've got to be, if Ohio State just shuts down Dylan Sampson and the Tennessee running game, it's going to be a long day for the Tennessee offense. Because I don't think that so far up to this point, we've talked about it all year. It's been strange, but it didn't seem like that Tennessee really just fully trusted Nico to go take over a game with his arm.
Yeah.
You got to think that in 20-degree weather on the road at night in Columbus is not going to be the game that, we're just going to unleash him, turn him loose. Maybe they do, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think both teams are going to try to fill each other out a little bit on offense. I definitely think Tennessee's going to run the rock with Sampson. That's obviously what they want to do. And I think Tennessee's offensive line is one of the better offensive lines in the Southeastern Conference. So, I mean, man, again, Ohio State this year, multiple times, as good as Ohio State's defense is, there's been multiple times I'll walk away from those games kind of like the Texas offense with Ewers. I'm left with more to be desired from them. And like against the best team they played in Oregon, I mean, Oregon got buckets on them. So, I mean, Tennessee's obviously capable of doing it. But the thing with Josh Heupel in Tennessee, even if Ohio State is slowing down that run game, Tennessee will stay committed to it. They're not going to all of a sudden just pull out of it and start throwing it 40, 50 times.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So most teams Ohio State plays kind of have to go away from the run game because they get up on them and they get a lead on them. And I don't think that's going to be the case with Tennessee. Do you think that when you face Tennessee's offense in the passing game, you've got to have good safeties? Well, Ohio State has the best pair of safeties in college football in Ransom and Downs. So, because Tennessee, they're going to use the entire width of the field. They're going to be lining their receivers up outside the hash, up against the sidelines, and they're going to make you defend all of that green space. That is literally what their offense is. They want to make you play in space. So, we've seen a couple of these corners for Ohio State this year. The pass interferences that we've seen in some of these bigger games. Is it Igbenogson? Is that his name?
Igbenogson, yeah. Indiana, against Indiana and Oregon.
Yeah, multiple pass
Denzel Burke
interferences
against Oregon.
Yeah, Denzel Burke got picked on against Oregon. So we know how Josh Heupel's offense is, what they're going to do. They're going to run the rock with Dylan Sampson, and then Nico's going to pull it, and he's going to see how far he can throw it. Mm-hmm. And they're going to test you vertically. And if Nico can hit a couple of those shots, because they're going to take them, if he can hit a couple of those shots, this thing could get interesting quick.
How's the health of the wide receiver corps for Tennessee?
I think it's solid. I mean, I know that they had, transfer from USC. He's been there a few years. Going blank. Big-bodied receiver.
Well, they got Deontay Thornton.
Yeah, Thornton. I'll think of it in a minute.
Brazel.
Yeah, I'll think of it in a minute. But yeah, I think the health is fine at the wide receiver position. I know that they were a little banged up there at the end of the year, and I know that
they're gonna send guys streaking on the sidelines, and then
Brew McCoy.
Yeah, the safeties are going to have to make a choice.
Yep.
Whether or not they help over the top, because we've seen many times Thornton on a crossover, like he did it against Oklahoma. He did it against Vanderbilt late in the season, just crosser over the middle. And if the safeties aren't there to help or, try to lay a wood on him, like he's going to be wide open and he will have plenty of running space.
Yeah, and they put you in such a bind too on your defense, because if you don't commit extra bodies into the box for the run game, they run the football. Mm-hmm. If you commit extra bodies into the box to try to stop the run, that is, again, they're making you play borderline one-on-one on the outside with all of that space that you've got to defend. And that is why you see a lot of Tennessee receivers that are running open, but the problem has been this year, Nico hasn't consistently been hitting them.
Yeah.
And he did against Vandy. Mm-hmm. I know, for anybody says it, okay, it's Vandy. Yeah, Vandy's not Ohio State. I get it. But if Nico can hit some of those shots, I think that they've got a really good chance to do some damage to this Ohio State defense. And Ohio State has never – I was trying to think back, man. I don't think they've ever seen on offense the style like the Tennessee's going to play.
Yeah.
That former Art Briles type system like style that like Ole Miss runs it. There's a few other teams that run it in college football now too. Levy at Mississippi State runs it. It's just unique, and you don't see it very often. Like you don't see receivers lining up all the way out, completely as far out on the boundary as they possibly can get. To where, again, when you look up sometimes, you're like, my goodness, like there's only the 5 offensive linemen and tailback, and then you've got your couple of linebackers that are sitting there having to defend all of that space too with Dylan Sampson in the run game. And that is where they pop you. So be interesting to see, man, how Ohio State's defense decides, Jim Knowles and them, how they decide how they're going to defend this.
Yeah.
Because also, too, Tennessee gets the ball out pretty quick, so it's hard to get sacks on Tennessee. Now, you may get pressures on them, but it's hard to get sacks because of how quick they get the ball out, too.
Well, and Ohio State's defensive line is already pretty, hot and cold on the season.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes they come out on fire, and then against Oregon, they didn't do much.
Right. Agreed. And then, like you said, some games they look like, world beaters. They get after the quarterback, and sometimes you're wondering where's all these superstars that are going to be going pro? Yep. Where are they at? On the other side of the ball, it's just, I don't think Ohio State's going to be able to run the football on Tennessee. And I think Tennessee feels like they feel confident enough to where, like, Michigan's D-line is legit, elite. Still can't believe Ohio State, like Jake said a minute ago, how they attacked that Michigan. Like, I actually looked it up before this, dude. They had 18 runs. 18 runs in between the guards. 18 runs on those 18 runs.
Dive after halfback dive.
19 yards.
Yeah.
On those 18 runs. I feel pretty confident saying they're not going to do that in this game. I really do. I think that they were so stubborn, and I think that they, almost in a good way, have probably learned their lesson on that. And obviously they're watching every second of film on Tennessee, and they've got to know that Tennessee's got one of the best defensive lines in all of college football. There's a reason why Tennessee is one of the top 5 defenses in the country defending the run. And they've also got depth across the D-line. I mean, they run 8 or 9 at you. And they've got some grown-ass men along that D-line. So I don't think Ohio State's going to sit there and try to run the ball right into the teeth of that defense. This is going to come down. Can Will Howard make the plays? I actually do think that they can run Will Howard some, and that him be an extension of the run game and help the run game some. But Howard's going to have to make throws. They're going to have to get the rock to these running backs and these receivers in space. And I think that Tennessee is well equipped enough on defense to be able to handle it. Also, though, you think about it, who Tennessee's played this year. Dude, they haven't seen receivers like Ibuka and Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate.
The DB's got to be able to hold up for Tennessee for sure.
Absolutely. I do think that Ohio State's going to stress Tennessee's secondary a little bit in this one. But can all those injured offensive line, that banged up offensive line for Ohio State, can they block? Can they block Tennessee's defensive line enough to give Will Howard the time he needs to be able to make the throws?
Yeah.
That's why I think Will Howard's legs, I haven't looked at it, but I'm curious what his prop is for Will Howard rush yards in this game. But I'm going to give a pick. I'm not going to give a best. Actually, I am.
I'm going to give a pick too.
I've got a pick and I've got a best bet.
This is what people want to hear. They want to hear the picks.
I got you. All right. So my pick in this one is I'm going to take Tennessee plus 7.5 against the spread in this game, but I think Ohio State wins. I think Ohio State wins. I think it is probably somewhere around 24-20 type game is what I'm going to say. So I like Tennessee to cover the spread plus 7.5, but I'll take Ohio State in a very, very nail-biter close game.
Yeah, I know it gets cold in Knoxville, right? But the ATB weather alert sirens went off here, and it's the real feel in Columbus on Saturday night is going to be 13 degrees. And if you remember back to that Georgia game, I can't get it out of my mind. The heaters were broken on the sideline, and everybody was freaking out for Tennessee. And the temperature of that game in Athens was 55 degrees. Yeah. And Herbie was talking about it. Fowler, I mean, they were kind of, throwing jabs at Tennessee, making fun of them a little bit. But this is what people wanted to see is some of these, I guess, Tennessee's kind of a southern team, going up to a northern climate, where we have never seen a playoff game like this and bowl game, anything
Mm-hmm.
like this resemble cold weather that they're going to see on Saturday night. With that all being said, I'm taking Tennessee to win the game. I'm taking Tennessee to win the game in Columbus. I have absolutely zero faith in Ryan Day. I've had zero faith all season in Will Howard. I think it's going to be very low scoring. I think the offenses are going to be able to move the ball, but the defenses are going to stiffen up in the red zone. There's going to be a lot of field goal attempts. If there's a little touch of wind, Ohio State's kicker did not do well with that in the Michigan game. And I just think Tennessee has the defense like you talked about. I don't think that I know that Ohio State has the weapons. I just don't think they're going to threaten that much. And then on the other side of the ball, I think if Nico hits one or two plays, I think Tennessee has a chance. So I'm taking the Vols 23-19.
Okay.
In the Horseshoe.
Outright. We're around the same total number. The total in this game's 48, so maybe we can take a look at the under too.
Yeah.
Yep. Good stuff, man. Well, just let's move on to the Hoosier State right there in your backyard.
Yep. In-state battle at South Bend, Indiana at Notre Dame. Notre Dame 7.5-point favorites. Total of 51.5. Yeah, we talked about this game with Jake. Like it's just it's going to be an interesting, fascinating game. Again, 11 degrees, real field temperature up in South Bend on Friday night. That's nothing that Indiana's not used to, being in the same state and being 3.5 hours away from South Bend.
I mean, yeah, it was
there's not really an advantage there.
Yeah, it was basically piss and snow in the bucket game. So
yeah. So I mean, and now where it would be an advantage is if it does get a little windy, like we said with Curtis Rourke, them liking to throw the ball, being an on-schedule team. If it gets a little windy, that'll get a little tricky for them because I don't think they're going to have a lot of success on the ground. Howard Cross will be back for this game for Notre Dame. On the offensive side of the ball, Jeremiah Love is playing for Notre Dame. So all is good there. I think the three-headed attack, like I mentioned, with Jadarian Price, Jeremiah Love, and Riley Leonard with Notre Dame, I think they're going to pose problems to Indiana's defense. We're talking about two teams here who are first and third in average scoring margin this season. So they've taken care of business, albeit against lesser schedules, but they've taken care of business in very impressive fashion against the teams they've played.
And two of the best rush defenses in college football.
Yep, Indiana's the number one rush defense in college football. Rushing yards per game, they give up about 70. I would be shocked if Notre Dame didn't have 70 by the end of the first quarter, to be honest with you.
Okay, calling your shot. I see you.
Listen, out of a script, just Mike Denbrock's script at the beginning of a game, his first drive, every time I turn on a Notre Dame game, if I turn it on time or if I turn it on a couple minutes late, they get the ball and they just drive straight down. Like the first drive has been no issue for them. They drive straight down. They design some runs for Riley Leonard. He probably gets 2, 3, 4 carries on the first drive, and they usually punch it in for a touchdown. So I just think they're going to come out. Notre Dame's going to come out a lot better than Ohio State did when they played Indiana at home.
Yeah, I definitely think that Indiana has the number one, like you said, Indiana's got the number one rush defense in college football, but they have not faced a rushing attack like they're going to face here with Notre Dame with Riley Leonard and those two tailbacks. Again, having to account for the quarterback who might be just as good as anybody on the field at running the football in general. We heard Jake talk about like how he just runs heavy with his pads and he's a tough inside runner. Like he can, take off and leave you a little bit too, but he's not like your Lamar Jackson or something like that type.
Yeah.
He's exactly what this Notre Dame team has built this team off of this year, which I'm going to say it again, which is violent. That's what this Notre Dame team wants to be. They want to line up and test your will. So Indiana, with the number one rush defense in the country, it's going to be strength versus strength. I don't see Notre Dame coming out here and all of a sudden lining up in 5 wide and we're just going to sling it all over the field. No. They're going to line up and they're going to do what they do and see if you can stop it. I actually do, though, think that Indiana can hold up a little bit against the run. I don't think that Notre Dame just going to run all over them, but I do think they're going to have a lot more success in the run game than other teams have had against Indiana this year.
Yeah.
And I'm with you, man, as far as the weather and Curtis Rourke throwing the football and Indiana throwing the football in this weather. They definitely want to rely on the passing game a little bit more as well. But again, Indiana's got some solid backs too. They've got 2 or 3 solid backs that can run at you. But again, Rourke is more of your statue type quarterback that is you know where he's going to be in the pocket when he goes back to throw. Like he's a standing target that you can go send pressure after to go get. I just don't know if, again, like you talked about after the USC game, it looks like that Notre Dame's defensive weakness with no Benjamin Morrison and stuff, if there is one, I don't know about a weakness, but if it's somewhere where you can really attack them, is attack them in their secondary, in the passing game down the field. Well, if the weather is going to have a big impact on that, then that's going to take away what Indiana really wants to do on offense. So my pick in this game is I'm taking Notre Dame to win. I don't know as far as the line is concerned, so I'm not going to give out a best bet like I did with Tennessee at +7.5. I don't have a best bet on the line. Again, I do think it's going to be a little lower scoring. I do have a best bet in this game on a total, which means they'll probably score a billion because I've been awful on totals this year. But I'm going to take under. There's some 51.5s, and I've even seen a couple of 52s. I'm taking under 52 in this game. I think the weather, I think the way that Notre Dame plays on defense, I think that Indiana being able to hold up a little bit against the run. I do think both teams are going to be running the football a lot in this game and try to lean on their defenses. So I'm going to take under 52, and I think Notre Dame finds a way to win this game. But I don't have a score prediction like I did in the other one.
I do think if you think that the weather, obviously with it being cold, I mean, you can be acclimated as much as you can, but still, until you start hitting other teams in that cold of weather and you know how that feels, it might take you a little bit to get used to it. So, playing like a first quarter under, under the point total, maybe it's 6.5, 7.5, kind of hoping for a 7-0 first quarter or something like that. That might be the way to go, but yeah, I'm with you, man. I think, like Jake said, I mean, Indiana wants to be a routine, on-schedule team. Mm-hmm. And if Notre Dame puts pressure on them early, like Ohio State did with Rourke, and like I said, he was seeing ghosts out there with Jim Knowles' defense, I think Notre Dame's front seven could do the same type of thing. And IU's going to have to try to keep it balanced with the running game, too, with Lawton and Ellison. And I think Rourke can have success through the air. I think he can. We saw what Jaden Mayava did. So they just play so much man-to-man that those guys are out on islands and they're susceptible to some of those back shoulder fades. So I do think Notre Dame, I think their talent is just too much here. None of these are best bets. These are picks for fun, really, for me right now. I'm taking the Irish 31-13. In a pretty handily victory here in South Bend at Notre Dame Stadium on Friday night. So,
are you going?
There is potential for me to go to this game. So, I haven't heard yet. Hope to hear soon. But we will see, and we'll. I gotta start bundling up, collecting the hand warmers, the foot warmers, the body warmers, all that.
Yeah,
stuff.
man. ATB with boots on the ground for a big one. We were at the Big Ten championship game together here recently, and now you might. Me growing up in the South, I just don't know if I'm made for a game in December in old South Bend at the Golden Dome. But yeah, good stuff, man. Well,
there was potential for Alabama to get there, right? And they were on track to play in South Bend, and that would have been a cold one for the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, we're just too busy losing by 21 plus to Oklahoma, so we can't. We're not made to be in South Bend in December, bro.
Can't be bothered with that this year. So
no. Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams and them were wearing massive cold gear, like they were on the frozen tundra at Lambeau Field in January for the Iron Bowl when it was like 52 degrees.
Yep.
That's wild to me now that I live up here in the Midwest. I totally get it now. When people used to make fun of people from the South when it got cold, I get it.
Yep.
But just a little recap here. I've got Tennessee plus 7.5 as a best bet. against Ohio State. I think they keep it close. I think Ohio State ends up finding a way to win, though. And then I've got under 52 as a best bet in the Hoosier State showdown between Indiana and Notre Dame.
I've got no best bets, but I think Tennessee and Notre Dame both come out on top. So this concludes part 1 of our CFP preview. We'll be back on Thursday with part 2, talking a little Penn State SMU and Texas Clemson. So appreciate you guys for joining in. Follow us on all social media, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and we'll see you on Thursday.